What's up, Pitt fans? Welcome to another edition of the PG Pitt Show brought to you by FanDuel. We're focusing a little bit more on basketball in this episode with me, Steve Thompson, and Abby Schnable. We both write about Pitt athletics for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and Abby was in the building to watch Pitt. Pitt men's basketball fall to Quinnipiac by a final score of 83-75. And Abby, this is the kind of loss that Jeff Capel had largely avoided, really ever since we made that first NCAA tournament back. I guess we're now 4 years removed for that. But this is something from earlier in his tenure at Pitt that had kind of plagued him, honestly, and plagued his teams, and losses to mid-majors now rearing their ugly head again.
Yeah, I think coming in, everyone expects the power conference opponent to win. You should. In theory, you have more talent. In theory, you're just being coached a little bit better. Then that's not a discredit to mid-major coaches. It's just it takes a lot to get a power conference job. And instead, Pitt looked like the lower team. I mean, 83-75. Anytime that they would start to creep in, they couldn't sustain the momentum. And that's just a quintessential thing about a team that just can't get it together. And people might say, oh, it would have gone better if Brandin Cummings in. And sure, it might have. But I also think that a lot of their issues are things that Brandin Cummings struggles with himself. So I'm not sure that just because he wasn't in there was the big deal. I think there are a lot of issues that came to play on this team. Surprisingly, not an issue with the big men. But overall, it was just a little disappointing to see because, after they lost against West Virginia, they bounced back really nicely the next game. And this was honestly worse, in my opinion, than the West Virginia loss because of who it was. And so it's just overall, yeah, you're sitting there kind of scratching your head all night with how did this happen? How did we get here?
Yeah, 12.5-point favorites according to our friends at FanDuel, and they end up losing by 8. Yeah, I'm with you. This was absolutely worse than the West Virginia loss. This is worse than UCF too. This is probably worse than any loss that they're going to take all year. Sorry, but you just can't be losing to mid majors. Doesn't matter really how good the mid major is. Maybe you make an exception if it's Duke, or if you're one of those people who still considers Gonzaga a mid major. That's one thing, but this is Quinnipiac. Like, I don't know. You have to beat teams like this. You just have to. And if you can't, then it's just really unlikely that anyone's going to, expect you to win an ACC game. But yeah, Abby, let's get into more, I guess, for a moment, the nitty gritty of what happened here. I mean, I think the first thing you said to me was defense, just none of it. And I think you can see that with 83 points given up.
Yeah, I mean, when you're allowing a team to shoot 64.7% from 3-point range, yeah, that's bad. 57.1% overall, and they stopped Zimmerman, who is their second leading scorer. He was limited, but other than that, that was about it. I mean, Omari Monroe had 25 points on 9 for 13 shooting. There just wasn't enough pressure, and Quinnipiac was moving the ball so much, and there were so many times that Pitt just looked like they almost weren't paying attention. I mean, they were paying attention, but they were just so slow to things. They weren't diving for balls. They weren't trying to force steals, with the exception of Roman Salepa and Makari Moore. I'm going to give him a shout out, even though he had 4 fouls because of it. But at least he was trying. Like, there were a lot of guys resting, and maybe that's an issue with fatigue, but just the overall lack of intensity on defense came to play. And I don't think that they've had that issue as bad. Like, I feel like for the most part, there's been intensity, even if it dipped toward the end. But like, you can't do this against a MAC team. You just can't. And I don't even know. Maybe it was because the guard play wasn't phenomenal. Maybe it was because the offense wasn't doing well, because usually, they go hand in hand. But I thought the offense actually wasn't terrible, but the defense was. So it's almost just confusing because this team can defend. So what was going on? Demarco Minor wasn't really adding pressure. You didn't have Brandin Cummings, and Omari Witherspoon he looked like a freshman out there. And so when your guards aren't guarding and you're relying too much on your forwards, on your centers. Yeah, they can only do so much. And I thought they did do a good job for the most part down low, but 11 threes, that's just a dagger.
Yeah, for Omari Monroe,
Mhm.
a guy that Pitt recruited out of the transfer portal to come into your own place and burn you. It's just not pretty. And this is a Pitt team that I think had prided itself on defense, and they came into the year saying they were going to be an improved defensive team, and you saw them play like for the first few weeks of the season, and even when they lost, they defended pretty well. At least their first shot defense was. The defensive rebounding obviously leaves something to be desired, but yeah, it's just bleak when something happens like that. And it's the guard play, with Deshaun Jackson being out indefinitely, like the guard play was going to have to carry Pitt through this season. That's where they had the most depth, but yeah, really, I think you're learning that there's just no depth really anywhere, and because this team is so thin, because they aren't really capable of going more than meaningfully, 7 guys deep. It's going to really hurt them in the second half of games. We saw that against West Virginia. We saw that against UCF too. And I think we're going to see it a lot more this year. Like, this team just doesn't have enough playable depth, and it's really going to burn them when the games start to matter a little bit more and when the competition takes a step forward. It's already hurting them, and I can't see a situation where this gets any better short of, Makari Moore really breaking out, or all of a sudden Kieran Mullen, becoming a piece. But I want to ask you, Abby, Papa Kante, only 4 minutes. He didn't play that much against UCF either. Did Jeff Capel have anything to say about that? Because I feel like that's, we talked about it earlier in the year, Kante and Cam Corhen being on the court together had been some of Pitt's best lineups. So why not a whole lot of Papa Kante these last 2 games?
I don't think we asked because there were so many other glaring things that we asked about. And any question he asked, he just kept coming back to how bad they were defensively, honestly. But it's very interesting you say that, because depth, Cam Corhen wouldn't get as tired if you're playing Papa Kante more. And I think Papa Kante adds the little bit of energy that Jeff Capel said was missing yesterday. And honestly, the 2 players who played the least in Kante and Moore are just they had the most energy, but they got the least amount of playing time. And maybe you can, for Makari Moore, you can kind of chalk that up to the amount of fouls he was drawing. But for Papa Kante, every time he went in, which again wasn't a lot, he was jumping, he was fighting for balls, he was doing all the things that Jeff Capel said the rest of the team didn't do. And so it's honestly just a big question mark as to why he's not playing more at this point, because you have nothing to lose. Like, at this point, the competition at forward, it's not going to drop down a lot. I mean, Cam Corhen's really decent, but when he's playing exhausted because he's played 35 plus minutes every single game this season, what's the difference between having an exhausted and can't be physical because of foul trouble Cam Corhen, and throwing Papa Kante in there, who didn't, yeah, he's foul prone, but he had the opportunities, and he hustles. And when you're talking about your team not having energy, you would think you'd play the guy who's been hustling. And for as far as the some of their best lineups, I feel like that has done really well against taller teams, and maybe it would have done well here too. I don't recall it happening for very long, if it did, last night, but it was the 3-point shooting and the jumpers that really got them, so less of the down low attention. So I still think you put him in. I mean, you do anything you can when you're down 10 to Quinnipiac.
Yeah. I would just be interested to see. I'm just surprised that I thought he played some really solid games, in the first couple weeks of the season, and all of a sudden just his minutes have kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And so I'm just curious what is kind of holding Kante back. The outlook for the rest of the season, extremely rough, especially because the schedule does, again, pick up a little bit more after this. They play Ohio State on Friday evening, Then they host Texas A&M next Tuesday, December 2nd. And then on December 13th, you got to go play Villanova. Penn State awaits after that. You've got 4 more high major non-conference games And Pitt is, if you believe KenPom, only going to be favored in 3 of their remaining games. Those are games against Hofstra, Binghamton, and Notre Dame at home. So, yeah, look, you can kind of explain away losses to West Virginia or UCF. I think we knew this year was going to be pretty rough for Pitt. I don't think many people imagined it would be lose to Quinnipiac rough. And so this really does kind of change your outlook on the season, and I think makes you a lot more pessimistic about what's to come. And it's not very encouraging, and I think it's fair to wonder what kind of program will be awaiting the top 10 recruiting class that is supposed to come to Pittsburgh next year and has signed their letters of intent last week.
Yeah, I think you or Chris Carter said this last year around January that they just seem checked out, and January is late, or is still early in the season to start looking checked out. But like, they almost looked, I don't know if it's tired or if it's just they see the reality of what they have, but it's a little confusing as to why they aren't fighting a little bit more. And, maybe I'll give exceptions to, I already said Makari Moore out there, but Barry Dunning Jr., Roman Salepa, he had 20 points at career high in rebounds as well. So it's like, you see, we talked about this before the season. You see the pieces, but it's confusing as to why they're not coming together at this point. And I wonder how much of that has to do with, maybe they focus too much on working through Deshaun Jackson in the preseason. And now you're in a situation where you don't have that. And you're trying to find different ways to score. You're trying to find different ways to defend. You're just trying. They should be trying everything. And I'm not sure they are at this point. And yeah, maybe it gets a little bit better when Brandin Cummings is back in the mix. And maybe it gets a little bit better because they got punched in the mouth. But yeah, it's just at this point, you lost to Quinnipiac, and there's not a lot looking forward except for, hoping you can get a big upset down the line. But I'm not even sure that's possible.
Not looking good for Pitt basketball right now, but we will keep following them throughout the season. A big game against Ohio State, a chance to bounce back if they're able to address some of the issues that they've had over the past couple of weeks as they started to lose a little bit more. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you to like this video, subscribe to PG Pitt on YouTube, follow all our written work at post-gazette.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.